Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise in thee, and do powerfully command thee, O Spirit. Elon, I, the Tetragrammaton, the Lord God Most High, I do exercise in thee, and do powerfully command.
In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome to the Abracast. I'm your host, John Towers. We're working our way still through Exodus. So we're going to continue to do that this evening. Hold on, I'm going to screw around with my level here for a second. All right, we'll get this party started the right way, the way that we have done it since time immemorial, since the time that Moses saw God's... What is wrong? His butt crack. His crack. I have my vessel of the art here, jam-packed with the formula for my weapon of mass distraction, the Jin Jihad. So here we go. Let's get it started and get this show on the road. All right, where were we? Yes, the butt. Exodus 33. Let's see. I'm just going to get us caught up here. 33:18. Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory." The Lord said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But," he said, "you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." And then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on this rock, and when my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." It's just one of my favorite little stories. Like, what the hell is going on? All right. Obviously, I was not prepared. It's a little early in the day, too. So, okay, Ginsburg's Legends of the Jews, we're picking up from there by talking about the 13 attributes of God. The cave in which Moses concealed himself while God passed in review before him with his celestial retinue. I think it's just his retainers. It's like a group of advisors or something, was the same in which Elijah lodged when God revealed himself to him on Horeb. If there had been in it an opening even as tiny as a needle's point, both Moses and Elijah would have been consumed by the passing divine light, which was of an intensity so great that Moses, although quite shut off in the cave, nevertheless caught the reflection of it, so that from its radiance his face began to shine, not without great danger. However, did Moses earn this distinction? For as soon as the angels heard Moses request God to show him his glory, they were greatly incensed against him. And they said to God, "We who serve thee night and day may not see thy glory. And he who was born of a woman asked to see it." Psh! In their anger, they made ready to kill Moses. Imagine being killed after going through all of this shit with God and this fucking bull thing and slavery in Egypt and all this. Who would certainly have perished had God's hand and not protected him from the angels. And then God appeared in the cloud. It was the 7th time he had appeared on earth, and taking the guise of a precentor of a congregation, he said to Moses, "Whenever Israel hath sinned and calleth me by the following 13 attributes, I will forgive them their sins. I am the Almighty God who provides for all creatures, and I'm the merciful one who restrains evil from mankind, and I'm the gracious one who helps in the time of need, and I'm the long-suffering to the upright as well as to the wicked, and I am bountiful to those whose own deeds did not entitle them to lay claim to rewards, and I am faithful to those who have the right to expect good from me in preserving graciousness, and in the 2000th generation I forgive misdeeds and even atrocious actions in forgiving those who repent." When Moses heard this, and particularly that God is long-suffering with the sinners, he prayed, "Oh, forgive me then Israel's sin which they committed in worshipping this golden calf." Had Moses now prayed, "Forgive the sins of Israel until the end of all time," God would have granted that too. He's so schizophrenic in these texts, as it was at the time of mercy. But as Moses asked for forgiveness for this one sin only, the one only was pardoned. And God said, "I have pardoned according to thy word." The day on which God showed himself merciful to Moses and to his people was the 10th day of Tishri, the day on which Moses was to receive the tablets of the law from God for the 2nd time. And all Israel spent it amid prayers and fasting, and the evil spirit might again lead them astray. Their ardent tears and exhortations, joined with those of Moses, reached heaven, so that God took pity on them and said to them, "My children, I swear by my lofty name that these your tears shall be tears of rejoicing for you, that this day shall be a day of pardon and of forgiveness and of the canceling of sins for you, for your children, and your children's children to the end of all generations." This day was, here, I'm not ready for anything. Where's my fucking pen? Okay, so hold on for 1 second. I just got to make a note here. I'm fascinated by this the sins of the father transfer to the son business. It seems so, I don't know, communistic or something. Like, here in the West, our worldview is generally individualistic. It's, we have the power of the individual. We hand over power to sheriffs, to elected officials, to government. Like if whenever we talk about the 5,000 year leap, great book, highly recommend it. We look at the way that it's described in that book is, it's a upside down triangle, and the smallest point is the individual pushing power up, pushing their power power up. So whenever I run into this thing about your children's going to be punished for some bullshit that you did, generally I'm like, you're supposed to be the fair God. Didn't you just say that? Like, how is that fair to your kid's kid, 5 generations down? Anyhow, this is me editorializing. Back to it. This day was not set for the annual Day of Atonement, without which the world could not exist, and which will continue even in the future world, when all other holy days will cease to be. The Day of Atonement, however, is not only a reminiscence of the day in which God was reconciled to Israel and forgave them of their sins, but it was also the day which Israel finally received the Torah. For after Moses had spent 40 days in prayer until God finally forgave Israel of their sins, he began to reproach himself for having broken the tables of the law, saying, Israel asked me to intercede for them before God, but who will, on the account of my sin, intercede before God for my sake? And God said to him, grieve not for the loss of the first 2 tablets, which contained only the 10 commandments. This second tables that I am now ready to give thee shall contain halakot, midrash, and haggadah. I am not familiar with any of these except for the midrash. If I'm understanding it correctly. So it's like a class. It's the midrash are stories that are used to kind of remix and beef up the canon stories. So I imagine halakot and haggadah is something like that. But that's a midrash. On the new moon, on the month of Elul, Moses had the trumpet sounded throughout the camp, announcing to the people that he would once more betake himself to God for 40 days to receive the second tables from him, so that they may be alarmed by his absence. And he stayed in heaven until the 10th day of Tishri, on which day he returned with the Torah and delivered it to Israel. So the second tables, whereupon the first tables had been given on Mount Sinai amidst great ceremonies. The presentation of the second tables took place quietly, for God said, there is nothing lovelier than quiet humility. The great, as angels fly around his throne 24 hours a day for all eternity, singing holy, holy, holy. The great ceremony, yeah, that's pretty humble. The great ceremonies on the occasion of presenting the first tablets had the evil effect of directing an evil eye towards them, so that they were finally broken. And this also were the second tables differentiated from the first. The formers were the work of God, and the latter the work of man. God dealt with Israel like the king who took himself to wife and drew up the marriage contract with his own hand. One day, the king noticed his wife engaged in a very intimate conversation with the slave, and enraged at her unworthy conduct, he turned her, there's a typo in this text, he turned her out of his house. Then, who had given the bride away at the wedding, came before the king and said to him, O sire, dost thou not know whence thou didst take thy bride, that she had been brought up among the slaves, and hence is intimate with them? And the king allowed himself to be appeased, saying to the other, take a paper and let a scribe draw up a new marriage contract, and here, take my authorization signed in my own hand. Just so did Israel fare with the God when Moses offered the following excuse for their worship of the golden calf. O Lord, dost thou not know whence thou hast brought Israel out of the land of idolaters? And God replied, Thou desirest me to forgive them. When then I shall do so. Now fetch me hither tables on which I may write the words that were written on the first. But to reward thee for offering up thy life for thy sake, I shall in the future send thee along with Elijah, and both of you together may prepare Israel for final deliverance. Moses fetched the tables out of the diamond quarry in which God pointed out to him, and the chips that fell during the hewing from the precious stone made a rich man of Moses, so that he now possessed all the qualifications of a prophet: wealth, strength, humility, and wisdom. In regards to the last named, be it said that God given Moses the charge of all the 50 gates of wisdom, except one. He only gets the keys. He only gets to be in charge of 49 gates of wisdom. As the chips falling from the precious stones were designed for Moses alone, so too had originally the Torah, written on these tables, been intended only for Moses and his descendants. But he was a benevolent of spirit, and he imparted the Torah to all of Israel. The wealth that Moses procured for himself in fashioning the Torah was reward for having taken charge of the corpse of Joseph. Remember that episode? While all the people were appropriating to themselves the treasures of the Egyptians. And now God said, Moses deserves the chips from these tables. Israel, who did not occupy themselves with the labors of piety, carried off the best of Egypt at the time of their exodus. Shall Moses, who saw to the corpse of Joseph, remain poor? Therefore, I will make him rich through these chips. During the 40 days he spent in heaven, Moses received, besides the 2 tables, all the Torah, the Bible, the Mishnah, Talmud, and the Haggadah, yea, even all that ever clever scholars would ask their teachers was revealed to him. And now we received the command from God to teach this to Israel. He requested God to write down all of the Torah and give it to Israel in that way, but God said, gladly, I would give them the whole in writing, but it is revealed before me that the nations of the world will hereafter read the Torah translated into Greek and will say, we are the true Israel, for we are the children of God. And I shall say to the nations, ye claim to be my children. Do ye not know that those are only my children to whom I have confided my secret, the oral teaching? This was the reason why the Pentateuch was given only to Moses in writing, and the other parts of the Torah by the word of mouth, and hence the covenant God made with Israel reads, quote, I give ye written and an oral Torah. My covenant with you says that ye shall study the written Torah as a written thing, and the oral as an oral thing. But in case you have confounded the one with the other, you will not be rewarded. For the Torah's sake alone have I made a covenant with you. Had ye not accepted the Torah, I should not have acknowledged you before all other nations. Before you accepted the Torah, you were just like all these other nations. And for the Torah's sake alone, I have lifted you above the others. Even your king, Moses, owes the distinction he enjoys in this world hereafter to the Torah alone. Had you not accepted the Torah, then should I have dissolved the upper and the underworlds into chaos. 40 days and 40 nights Moses now devoted to the study of the Torah, and all this time he ate no bread and drank no water, acting in accordance with the proverb, if thou enterest a city, observe its laws. The angel followed this maxim when they visited Abraham, for they ate like men. So did Moses, who being among the angels, like the angels, partook of no food. He received nourishment from the radiance of the Shekinah, which also sustains the holy Hayat that bear the throne. Moses spent the day in learning in the Torah from God, and the night repeating what he had learned. In this way, he set an example for Israel, that they may occupy themselves with the Torah by night and by day. During this time, he also wrote down the Torah. Although the four angels found it strange that God should give him the commission to write down the Torah, and gave him expressions to their astonishment in the following words that they addressed to God: "How is it that thou givest Moses permission to write, so that he may write whatever he will? And say to Israel, I give you the Torah, I myself wrote it, and then I gave it to you. But God answered, far be it from Moses to do such a thing, because he is a very faithful servant." And when Moses had completed the writing of the Torah, he wiped his pen on the hair of his forehead, and from this heavenly ink that cleaved into his forehead originated the beams of light that radiated from it. And this way God fulfilled to Moses the promise: "Before all thy people I will do marvels, such have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation." On Moses' return from heaven, the people were greatly amazed to see his face shining, and there was fear, too, in their amazement. This fear was a consequence of their sin, for formerly they had been able to bear without fear the sight of the glory of the Lord that was like a devouring fire, although it consisted of 7 sheaths of fire laid one over another. But after their transgression, they could not even bear to look upon the countenance of the man who had been the intermediator between themselves and God. And Moses quieted them, and instantly set about imparting to the people the Torah, which he had received from God. His method of instruction was as follows. First came Aaron, to whom he imparted the word of God. And as soon as he had finished with Aaron, came the sons of Aaron, Eleazar and Ithmar, and he instructed them. And while Aaron sat on his right hand listening, when he had finished with the sons of Aaron, the elders appeared to receive instructions. And while Eleazar sat to the right hand of his father, and Ithmar to the left hand of Moses, and listened. And when he had finished with the elders, the people came and received instructions, whereupon Moses withdrew, and then Aaron went over what he had been taught, and the sons likewise, and the elders, until everyone from Aaron down to every man out of the possible had 4 times repeated what he had learned. For this was the way that God bid Moses to impress the Torah 4 times upon Israel. So this is something that I always found fascinating about Moses. I've had more years of art history than I care to recall. But we would run across these religious statues and paintings depicting Moses coming down the mountain, and some of them would have his face shiny, or some would have gold like radiating out of his fucking face and all this stuff. And there was one that was fascinating because he had horns. He had like ram's horns. Famously, Michelangelo did a sculpture of Moses with horns. Ruggieri did a sculpture with Moses with horns. So you see this motif. Those are just 2 like kind of in my internal, off the top of my thing, head, and when you would ask about this, I've always been kind of obviously interested in this kind of stuff. So when I'd ask my art history teachers, when I would ask them about these horns, or it would come up, like the slide would come up or whatever, and we would be discussing this, like, what's with the fucking horns already, though? And the sort of common answer was that they were depictions of this light that would emanate off of Moses's face or his head. But it's interesting now when I start to think about it in the context of astrotheology and Moses would be in the age of Aries. So I think it's definitely an Aries kind of story. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that. You know, we've, for the last 3 or 4 Exodus episodes, this astrotheological thing has been popping up because of the gold calf business. So I just think that's interesting. Yeah, 100%. When I draw Moses, I give him big, blazing, laser horns. He is in my graphic novel, The Ages. There's some fun stuff with him. I also take that breastplate, the Jewish high priestess chest plate, and I turn it basically into kind of like a wrestling title belt. I have a I'll go ahead and I'll publish it. I have a t-shirt graphic of Moses smashing the 10 Commandments, so you can see his laser horns and his little WWE wrestling belt. Of course, he wouldn't be in the WWE. He'd be like he would be an indie guy for sure, traveling the territories, working the Egypt Sinai wrestling promotion. Anyhow, go to www. I don't know why I just did that. Go to Abracast.com, check out the storefront, go to the t-shirts section, and I'll go ahead and I'll publish that so you can kind of see my my take on Moses. Okay, let's see. The census of the people. At the sight of the rays that emanated from Moses' face, the people said to him, "We were humbled by God owing to that sin we had committed. God, thou sayest, had forgiven us and is reconciled to us. Thou, Moses, were included in our humiliation. And we see that he has once more exalted thee, whereas in spite of the reconciliation with God, we remain humbled." Hereupon Moses betook himself to God, and he said, "When thou didst humble them, thou didst humble me also. Hence shouldest thou now raise them too, if thou hast raised me?" And God replied, "Truly, as I have exalted thee, soon I will exalt them also. Record their number, and through this show the world how near to my heart is this nation that before all others acknowledged me as their king, singing by the Red Sea, 'This is my God, and I will exalt him.'" Moses then said to God, "O Lord of the world, thou hast so many nations in thy world, but thou carest nothing about recording their numbers. Only Israel dost thou bid me to count." And God replied, "All these multitudes do not belong to me. They are all doomed to the destruction of Gehenna." Gehenna is just like another hell dimension. According to my Dungeons and Dragons manual of the planes I had when I was in 8th grade. But Israel is my possession, and as men most prize the possession he paid most dearly, so is Israel most dearest to me, because I have with great exertions made it my own. Moses further said to God, "O Lord of the world, to our father Abraham thou made the following promise, and I will make thy seed as the stars in the heavens. And now thou biddest me number Israel. If their forefather Abraham could not count them, then how should I?" And God quieted Moses, saying, "Shh, shh, 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 shh. Thou needest not actually count them, But if thou wouldest to determine their number, add together the numerical value of the names of the tribes, and the result will be their number. A little bit of gematria going on right now. And truly in this way did Moses procure the sum total of the Jews, which amounted to 60 myriads less 3,000, the 3,000 having been swept away by the plague, punishment for their worship of this golden calf. Hence the difference between the number at the exodus from Egypt when Moses had counted them for the first time and the number at the second census after the losses incurred by the plague. God treated Israel as did that king his herd, who ordered the shepherds tell the tale of the sheep when he heard that wolves had been among them and had killed some of them, having this reckoning made in order to determine the amount of his loss. On the occasion on which, in the course of history, Israel were numbered as followed: Jacob counted his household upon entering Egypt. Moses counted Israel upon the exodus of Egypt, and after the worship of the golden calf, at the arrangement into camp divisions, and at the distribution of the promised land. Saul twice instituted a census of the people, the first time when he set out against Nahash, the Ammonite, and the second time when he set out in war upon Amalek. It is significant of the enormous turn in the prosperity of the Jews during Saul's reign. For at the first census, every man put down a pebble so that the pebbles might be counted. But at the second census, the people were so prosperous that instead of putting down pebbles, each man brought a lamb. And there was a census in the reign of David, which, however, not having been ordered by God, had unfortunate consequences both for the king and for the people. Ezra instituted the last census when the people returned from Babylon to the Holy Land. Apart from these 9 censuses, God will himself count his people in the future time, when their number will be so great that no mortal will be able to count them. So here's God. They're kind of telling the story like Quentin Tarantino, non-linear, kind of jumping ahead a little bit in their little timeline all the way to the end. What would be the Jewish messianic times. There was an offering to the sanctuary connected with the second census in Moses' time, when everyone above 20 years of age had to offer up half a shekel. For God said to Moses, "They indeed deserve death for having made this golden calf, but let each one of them offer up to the eternal atonement money for his soul, and in this way redeem himself from capital punishment." When the people heard this, they grieved greatly, for they thought, "In vain did we exert ourselves in taking the booty from the Egyptians." It's all about booty this episode. If we're not to yield up our hard-earned possessions as atonement money. The law prescribes that man pay 50 shekels of silver for dishonoring a woman, and we have dishonored the word of God. Should we have to pay at least equal to that amount? The law furthermore decrees that if an ox kills a servant, his owner shall pay 30 shekels of silver. Hence, every Israelite should have to discharge such a sum. For we changed our glory into the similitude of that of an ox eating the grass. But these 2 fines would not suffice, for we slandered God, he who brought us up out of Egypt, by calling out to the calf, "This is thy God that brought thee up out of Egypt." And slander is punishable by the law with 100 shekels of silver. And God, who knew of their thoughts, said to Moses, "Ask them why they are afraid. I do not ask them to pay such a high fine as he who dishonors or seduces women, nor the penalty of slander, nor the owner of a goring ox. All that I ask them is this: And hereupon he showed Moses at the fire a small coin that represented the value of half a shekel. This coin, each one of these who had passed through the Red Sea was to give as an offering. These were several reasons why God asked particularly for the value of half a shekel as a penalty as they committed their sins, the worship of the golden calf in the middle, that is half of the day, so that they were to pay half a shekel. And furthermore, as they committed their sin in the 6th hour of the day, so they were to pay half a shekel, which is the 6 grains of silver. This half shekel furthermore contained 10 gerahs, and is hence the corresponding fine for those who trespassed the 10 commandments. This half shekel was also to be an atonement for the sins committed by the 10 sons of Jacob, who sold their brother Joseph as a slave, for whom each had received half a shekel as his share. The erection of the tabernacle commanded. When on that memorable day of atonement, God indicated his forgiveness to Israel with the words, "I have forgiven them according as I have spoken," Moses said, I now feel convinced that thou hast forgiven Israel. But I wish thou wouldst show me the nations also that thou reconcile with Israel. For these were saying, how can a nation that heard God's word on Sinai, thou shalt have no other gods before me, that 40 days later called out to the calf, this is thy God, O Israel. Expect that God would ever be reconciled with them. God therefore said to Moses, as truly as thou livest, I will let my Shekinah dwell among them, so that they may all know that I have forgiven Israel. My sanctuary in their midst will be the testimony of my forgiveness for their sins, and hence it may be called a tabernacle of testimony. The erection of a sanctuary among Israel was begun in answer to a direct appeal from the people who said to God, O Lord of the world, the kings of the nation have placed in which are set a table, a candlestick, and other royal insignia, that their king may be recognized as such shall not though to our king, the Redeemer, the Helper, employ royal insignia, that all dwellers of the earth may recognize that thou art their king. God replied, my children, the kings of the flesh and blood need all these things, but I do not. For I need neither food nor drink, nor is light necessary to me. As can be seen by this, that my servants, the sun and the moon, illuminate all the world with the light they receive from me. Hence, ye need do none of these things for me. Without these signs of honor, I will let all good things fall to your lot in recognition of the merits of your fathers. But Israel answered, O Lord of the world, we do not want to depend on our fathers. Doubtless thou art our father through Abraham, be ignorant of us, and Israel acknowledges us not. God hereupon said, if you now insist upon carrying out your wish, do so, but do it in the way I command you. It is customary in the world that whoever had a little son cares for him, anoints him, washes him, feeds him, carries him around. But as soon as the son comes of age, he provides for his father a beautiful dwelling, a table, a candlestick. As long as you were young, did I provide that for you, washed you, fed you, gave you bread and meat. I gave you water to drink and bore you on eagle's wings. But now that you come of age, I wish that you build a house for me. Set therein a table and a candlestick, and make an altar of incense within it. And then God gave them detailed instructions for furnishing the tabernacle, saying to Moses, tell Israel that I order them to build me a tabernacle, not because I lack dwelling, for even before the world had been created, I had erected my temple in the heavens, but only as a token of my affection for you will I leave my heavenly temple and dwell among you. They shall make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. At these last words, Moses seized by great fear, such as he had taken possessions of him only on 2 other occasions. Once when God said, "Let each give a ransom for his soul." When he was alarmed, he said, "If a man were to give all that he had for his soul, it would not suffice." And God quieted him with the words, "I do not ask what is due, but only that which they can fulfill. A half a shekel will suffice." And then again, fear stirred Moses when God said to him, "Speak to Israel concerning my offering and my bread for my sacrifices made by fire." And he had said, trembling, "Who can bring sufficient offerings to thee? Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beasts thereof sufficient as a burnt offering." And then God quieted him with the words, "I demand not according to what is due, but that which they can fulfill. 1 sheep as a morning sacrifice, and 1 sheep as an evening sacrifice." The third time God was in the midst of giving Moses instructions concerning the building of the sanctuary, and Moses exclaimed in fear, "Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee. How much less is this sanctuary that we are to build thee?" And this time God quieted him with the words, "I do not ask what is due, but only that which they can fulfill. 20 boards to the north, as many as to the south, and 8 to the west. And I shall then draw my Shekinah together, that it may find room under them." God was indeed anxious to have his sanctuary erected to him. And it was a condition on which he led them out of Egypt. Yea, in a certain sense, the existence of all the world depended on the construction of the sanctuary. For when the sanctuary had been erected, and the world stood firmly founded, whereas until it had always been swaying hither and thither, hence the tabernacle in its separate parts also corresponded to the heaven and the earth that had been created on the first day. As the firmament had been created on the second day to divide the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above, so there was a curtain in the tabernacle to divide between the holy and the most holy. As God created the great sea on the third day, so did he appoint the laver in the sanctuary to symbolize it. And as he had on the day destined the plant kingdom as nourishment for man, so did he now require a table with bread in the tabernacle, and the candlestick in the tabernacle corresponded to the 2 luminous bodies, the sun and the moon, created on the 4th day, and the 7 branches of the candlesticks correspond to the 7 planets: Sun, Venus, Mercury, the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Corresponding to the birds, on the 5th day, the tabernacle contained the cherubim that had wings like birds. On the 6th day, the last day of creation, man had been created in the image of God to glorify his creator, and likewise was the high priest anointed the minister of the tabernacle before the Lord Creator. All right, everybody, have a good week. This is the Abracast, and I've been John Towers.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books at Abracast.com. Welcome to the Red Archive. Get access to over 50 hours of archived episodes, more bonus audio, additional exclusive content. All this for only $1 a month. Find the link to the Red Archive at Abracast.com.